Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Mr. Vega by Xyla Turner, narrated by Mari and Troy Duran. Prelude. "You live in the clouds, girl," my mother snapped again. "Your art degree will not do anything. Like I told you 6 years ago, the agency is hiring, just like they were when I first came over here, eh?" She sucked her teeth in the way only Caribbean women could, with a roll of her eyes. I could almost mimic it if I wanted to get smacked, and even at the age of 28, she would, indeed, smack me. At 47, the woman still wouldn't hesitate to discipline her child. "Ednis will call you, so you can get a job." Her dark but worn eyes leveled on me. Mama spoke to me in a tone that was not compromising, but final. "You need a job, eh? Get a job. Art won't get you a job." It would, but she didn't understand. It would happen with perseverance, consistency, and sometimes later in life. What my wise mother did know was that I didn't have the luxury to sit around and wait for success to come to me. It wouldn't happen overnight, and in any further nights either. I needed a blessed job, and that could happen overnight. A nanny, though? I did not look down on the profession, not one bit, because I knew its power. Mom has been one for most of her life for the rich people, and while there were horror stories, she didn't have many. Well, not recently. She preferred not to do live-in situations since she had children of her own. All of her friends were nannies, and they had crazy stories for days, from bratty-ass kids to wandering husbands or wives. The job, for the most part, entailed helping to raise kids. But it could be household management, but at a cost. The working parents did not have a lot of time to do much of anything. Commutes could be from 30 minutes to hours. Hours could range from 4 to midnight, or for some, weeks of not being around. It was quite interesting, the lives that hired nanny services. I never cared for why they hired them, but I always wondered what the kids thought. "Are you listening to me, girl?" My mom was in my face again. "Come from those clouds. Hear me." "Mama, I hear you," I exclaimed. "Miss Ednis is calling, and I'll go to the agency. I need a job." I stood up from the kitchen table in the small Brooklyn apartment. I'd lived here all my life with my mom and sister, who moved all the way to Texas after she graduated from college. Cordelia, unlike me, had no tolerance for following in Mama's footsteps, or anyone, for that matter. She wanted to get away from the generation of nannies. I did not set out to be a nanny, which is why I went to college. I wanted to have choices, and I loved art. I still do. It brings me peace and a sense of serenity. It's almost as if anything is possible. Not today, it wasn't. I had been a struggling artist for close to 10 years. And the late bloomer of waiting for my career to take off had run out a year ago. I was late starting college, late finishing high school, late to the artistic world, and now late with the nanny business. I knew what it took to take care of a house since Mama was grooming me since I was 5. How to keep a house is what she called it. How to take care of one. How to take care of a child. She'd tell me of her stories, the tricks she learned, the types of people she encountered, and how to survive them. She was preparing me every step of the way, so I was confident in my skills, but I did not have the required experience. This could pose a problem, but since I knew the assessment almost like I knew the preamble, I would hopefully land with a good family. "Good," Mama nodded with a hesitant head roll. It was like she wasn't sure that she really won that round of get Faith a job. "I'll go tomorrow morning, Mama," I confirmed, so that she would settle down. The little money I did earn was not helpful with the household bills that were ever increasing, especially now that Brooklyn was in full swing of regentrification. It meant that the pressure to leave the rent-stabilized home was on as well. The slumlord, and not a landlord, was bothering Mama weekly with incentives to move. I told her it was harassment, and she needed to tell the management company, but she wouldn't hear it. She was paying less than $1,000 for rent. but he was charging the newcomers more than $3,000. Yeah, we were near the train station and a grocery store, but over $2,000 for a studio apartment and $3,000 for a one-bedroom was robbery. I knew it was the laws of supply and demand, but damn. The 3-bedroom apartment we had would no doubt go for more than $4,000, but Mama would not budge, and quite frankly, I did not blame her. She would in no way, shape, or form find another apartment where she would pay anything remotely to what she paid now. Nowhere in New York, that was for sure. The next day, I found myself at the agency in downtown Flatbush, signing myself up to be a nanny. The good thing was, they knew me because I was Josephine's daughter. I think this was strategic, too, because Mama wanted them to be familiar enough with me. So in the case of a moment like now, I was welcomed with, "Oh, my darling, your hair is growing nicely. You're so fashionable like your mama. Is she coming to play Teef and Cassie tonight?" "Hey, Miss Ednes," I greeted the older woman. "Yeah, she's coming to beat you all and brag about it all week," I laughed. "Nonsense," she gasped. "That woman there cheats. I tell you, she cheats." The laughter rolled over like a tidal wave as I sat down on the other side of the manager's desk for trusty nanny services. "Yeah, that's what I keep hearing." I finally replied and tried to get serious about my next steps. "It's true," she replied, but opened up my file. "Dear, you don't have much experience, but I know you know this work. You have been CPR certified for adults, adolescents, and infants. You have your certification, and you've babysat." She sucked her teeth while poking out her lips in that familiar way. "But I think we can do something about this." "Okay." I nodded at the woman. She thumbed through some more files on her desk and said, "This family is looking for someone to watch their 5-year-old son. He doesn't have any special needs. He's quiet, reserved, but the father is often away on business trips, and the mother owns her own company, and the couple needs help. It could be a live-in position, so that option is on the table. Right now, they need someone to get him to school, make his lunch, pick him up, clean the house, do laundry, help with homework, and cook. Ideally, you'd be our better candidate, since you have a college degree, but they have interviews tonight." She looked up at me with her straight black braids in a swirling style, outlining her crown with a mixture of gray and what looked like a blondish color. The office was adorned with flyers of nannies and children, health, education, and allergy awareness all over the walls, and in no particular order. The wooden desk consisted of files and papers neatly separated in piles, along with a standard stapler, scissors, tape dispenser, and a steel canister for writing utensils. "Yeah, today works," I nodded, and was glad that I dressed the part so that I could go from here. Good," she nodded. "They started this morning, but currently there's an opening at 5. It is the last minute, but they haven't been too pleased with people thus far. There are some on hold, but maybe you have a chance. They stress the experience, but I have a good feeling they might like you." "Are you sure?" I asked. I don't want to waste their time. "Every connection is for a reason. Even if it's not for this job, it may be for something else. You never know, darling. Just go at 5, be on time, and represent your mama well. She's proud of you, girl." I nodded and stood up, determined to see this through. "Thank you, Mrs. Ednes," I smiled. "I'll be there." "Good. Check in with me tomorrow and let me know how it went," she answered with a nod of her own, and then she stood. "Tell your mama, we're on to her ways." "Will do." I took the one-pager all nannies received about the families. "Thanks again." As I was leaving the room, Mrs. Ednes called my name. "Yes, ma'am," I answered as I turned my head to face her. "I've got a good feeling about this." She nodded and waved me away. I smiled and left out so that I could go to my makeshift studio, which was in the basement of a beauty supply store. My art was mostly posted up in the windows of the store, but maybe once a week I'd get a sale. On a good week, it was 5 sales. But still, I was not getting enough to make a living. It was enough for it to be a hobby, still. I almost lost track of time as I began to paint one of my favorite things to paint, my city, Brooklyn, and all its glory. It was something I'd seen every day of my life. Therefore, I knew it on an intimate level because it was constantly before me. The streets, lights, brownstones, projects, buildings, construction, lots, cemeteries, and even the pedestrians and citizens of the great city. My current piece was of the walk-up brownstone with its reddish bricks, stone steps, and spiral-rotted banister. It had a basement apartment with barred windows, a cement landing, and a bed of flowers and pots on the ledges lining the walkway. It was enough to bring color to the property, but high enough to hide the trash can and recycling bin. This was a typical Brooklyn home, and it was beautiful to me. One day, I'd have my own place, and instead of writing the vision, I drew it. Little did I know, the Vega family lived in a brownstone near downtown Brooklyn. That meant it was almost $500,000 to own one floor. All the ones in the area had been renovated already, so the price was astronomical. How I would ever afford one of these seemed to be far beyond what I could see. But I was a dreamer, and as far as I was concerned, anything was possible. It was 4:52 when I rang the doorbell of the main entrance. A few moments later, a woman answered the door with chestnut brown hair, pink lips, tired eyes, and pale skin with freckles splattered on her cheeks. "Hello?" She gave me a genuine smile. "You must be Faith. I'm Gail Vega." "Hi, Mrs. Vega." I smiled back. "It's nice to meet you." "Come on in. You're the last person we're interviewing today. We're a bit tired, but you came highly recommended," she shared as she led me upstairs to the second floor to what I presumed was their apartment. The interior wall was brick as well, which made me almost happy to be there. I'd only seen those in HGTV homes, but up close and personal, I could see the attraction. "So, Faith, you'll be meeting with me and my husband, Logan Vega. We've looked over your credentials already, so we have some questions for you." "Okay," I replied, as I went into the kitchen to see a small dining room table that sat 4 people. "Have a seat, Faith," the woman told me. "I'll go and grab Logan." I sat down and took inventory of the large space that was hidden by the skinny outside of the home. One wall in the living room was that of a blackboard. It had scribblings at the bottom, love notes in different colored chalk at the top, and on the side it had schedules and agendas outlined from Mama Vega, Daddy Vega, and Baby Vega. It was kind of cute. Well, except Daddy Vega was gone most of the damn time. In his calendar, the man was away for weeks at a time, which seemed to be sort of crazy. How did they make that work? I guess a nanny was one way they would at least try. A few minutes later, Mrs. Vega walked through the kitchen door, with a tall man trailing behind her. Before I saw him, I stood to shake his hand, and then my eyes met his. Damn, he was tall. The guy looked like an older Zac Efron, with those light gray eyes. He had shoulder-length hair that had a sprinkling of salt mixed in with his pepper. He was pretty tanned, as if he were Italian bred, and had a runner's body. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Vega." I gave him a quick shake and took my seat again. "Nice to meet you too, Faith," he said, but with a terse tone. Well, he surely wasn't friendly. His wife looked at him, but didn't say anything. Then she began to tell me about her background, the fact that she designed adaptive clothing for special needs children, and her business was finally taking off. She also explained that her husband was a curator, which meant he was constantly traveling all over, and it was quite a lucrative job, but both of them were extremely busy. "Faith, how about you tell us about yourself and why you're interested in being a nanny for our son, Casey?" Mrs. Vega asked. I shared my experience in college, my art career, or lack thereof, and then my interest in being a nanny for their son. I equated it to my experience of my mother, her stories and connections with the families, and more importantly, why working with Casey for an extended time was helpful for his development. Mrs. Vega seemed very interested, but her counterpart was barely listening. "Okay." She asked some more questions, then asked her husband if he had any questions. He nodded and said, "Mine is simple, and it's not a question, but a summary of what I just heard. You want this job because you failed as an artist. Do I have that right?" I scoffed before reeling my temper back in. His wife, on the other hand, snapped her neck around and hissed, "Logan Vega, how could you be so rude? A word, please." She stood up and marched to the back, as I simply looked on in horror. I contemplated getting up and leaving, because while Mama was against the whole art thing, she never said I failed, or even spoke to me so crassly. For a moment, I thought it was good that he was away, because the man was an asshole. Adjusting my posture in my chair, I tried to put on all the professionalism I could muster, and sat up straight. They came back to the table 2 minutes later, and since I didn't make eye contact right away, I took in both of their outfits. Both had on khaki pants. She had on moccasins and a light pink polo shirt that hung loose enough around her small but curvy frame. He had on a fitted t-shirt, with his khakis cuffed and sneakers with no socks. He looked like a rich, entitled ass. Those eyes were piercing, and he had a jutting chin and sharp jaw with a perfect set of teeth. He was the serious type, and she must be the free spirit, or maybe just the mama. "I apologize for Logan's comment," Mrs. Vega said for him. "We were looking for someone with experience, and you seem to lack it, but have some of the other qualities that we are looking for." I nodded, but said nothing for fear that I would cross the line, since he was a coward for not owning his shit. His wife had to speak for him. That was trifling. Mama always said not to judge a book by its cover. On the exterior, he was a heartthrob, but with our 5-minute interaction, I realized if I had to deal with him on a regular basis, I'd have to cave in his chest with my fist or mess up his model-like face. "For this position, Faith, it is a 4-year commitment. Will you be able to do that?" The woman interrupted my violent thoughts toward her worse half. 4 years? I thought it was 2. Wow, that was unusual. I thought about it. The money it paid and what was feasible. I'd likely not find a husband any time soon, which meant I was as free as a bird for the next 4 years. "That won't be a problem," I answered. "Can I see Casey?" Mrs. Vega looked at her husband, but he shrugged and nodded back to her, as if to say this was her show. "Sure, he's in his room playing video games. He likes the old-school ones," she clarified. I followed her, but the husband stayed put, which was good. "Sorry again for Logan," she shook her head. "We're stressing about finding the perfect nanny, and it was a long day of interviews. Not that it's an excuse for his rude behavior." I nodded, but refused to say anything because I didn't forgive him and would never forget. "He's through here." She led me to a room at the other end of the 2-bedroom house. Inside was a little boy. He was so engrossed in what was on the screen that he didn't hear us come inside. "Casey?" his mom called. "Say hello to Miss Jacobs." "Hi, Miss Jacobs," he called back, but kept his eyes on the screen. "Can you put that on pause, young man, and turn around, please?" she said in a stern voice. His little shoulders went up and down with a sigh before he hit the pause button and turned to view us. "Hello, Miss Jacobs," he said with measured patience, reminding me of his father. 2 guys with attitudes. Poor Mom. "What do you know about Mario and Luigi?" I probed the kid after watching what he was playing. "More than you?" he smirked, catching on to my thought. "Did you know Princess Toadstool is always in another castle until you get to World 8, and I beat Bowser, the real one?" I nodded with a lift of my nose. "No way!" he exclaimed. "How?" "And I didn't use cheat codes." "No way!" he exclaimed again. "You have to show me." "Well, I only show people who get to World 5, I told him. "Then I'll know you're skilled enough to handle the real Bowser." "World 5, Level 4, or 1?" he asked. Nodding at him, I said, "You're a smart one." Okay, let's say World 5, Level 4. He huffed and said, I'm only on World 3, Level 4. Well, it looks like you have a ways to go, I countered. Good luck, and stop using Luigi because he's really his sidekick. Ah, thanks. He quickly turned around and resumed playing again. World 5 it is. His mom laughed, and I turned to see her looking at her son in admiration, but also in sadness. She closed his door and said, When can you start? I blinked at her, but saw the intensity in her eyes. Well, I can get some things in order with my studio, but with the hours being what they are, I will have time for the transition, I answered honestly. You'll have time while he's in school. The cooking and cleaning won't take that long, so you'll have your own time. I nodded at her words, since they were true. With a schedule like she proposed, I could still pursue my art if I wanted, and I could even pay for the rent and not do odd ends for the beauty supply store. Can you start tomorrow? She asked with an almost desperation in her voice. Mrs. Vega, that's awfully early, I answered honestly. Also, I would prefer not to do the live-in. I know, but... She didn't finish her sentence because she was interrupted by Mr. Vega, who called her name in that same stern voice he spoke to me with earlier. A word, he beckoned. She looked like she wanted to sigh, but kept it in, saying, Excuse me, and went to him. I wandered to the living room, where my bag remained, and strapped it across my body. A few moments later, Mr. Vega came back into the living quarters and said, Miss Jacobs, thank you for stopping by. We'll be in touch with your agency. I'll see you out. Okay. Okay. Please tell Mrs. Vega I said good night. I replied, and led the way so that I could get out from his presence sooner rather than later. Good evening, he called, as I descended down the concrete stairs once I was outside. I turned to say goodbye, but the door was already closing. Well, okay. That was a hard no. Chapter 1. Faith Jacobs. She offered you the job on the spot, but then changed her mind? Mama asked. No, Mama, she didn't change her mind. I said for the 5th time. He must have. He was a jerk, I tell you, like a real jerk. The kid was nice, and so was his mother. But that man? I don't want to work for them, Mama. He was not nice, did not apologize for being rude, and seemed to be overbearing. I shrugged my shoulders as I put away the canned goods in the cupboard. Mama focused on the items for the freezer. I've had parents like that. I'd steer clear of them because they had other issues that I never wanted to uncover, she said, as she stuffed the beef in between the other meats in the freezer. Steer clear, sweetie. Mama, I don't think I have the job. He clearly didn't like me, and he did not seem like the type of man that would allow her to rule or make a decision like that. Know what I mean? Yes, sweetie. I know those men well. She shook her head, and I wasn't sure if she was speaking about clients or my absent father. Mama didn't mention the man even when we were children. She just said that he was alive and in Trinidad. Cordelia and I never asked about him, but there were times when I was curious. Not enough to pursue the matter, but had some thoughts about him. I wondered what he was like. She had pictures of him, but that was about it. What does he do for a living? He's a curator, which is why he travels all the time, I told her. Well, I'll go back tomorrow and speak to Mrs. Ednes, I shared, as I put away the last can of red beans. She had a list of things, so we'll move forward from there. Okay, sweetie, Mom nodded, as she closed the freezer door. You're smart. You'll get something. I left the house and wandered to my makeshift studio and looked at all my paintings while thinking of the words Mr. Vega said. He called my art a failure. But when I perused what I had created, there were the 30 canvases on stands throughout the small space. I did not see failure. I saw potential. But that small voice on the inside kept saying, never. I had tried to shut it up in the beginning, but it was a lot louder now. When that usually happened, I would begin to paint my way out of a depression. It didn't make sense to stay here, so I sat down and began to paint my never. I wrote the word in the middle of the white canvas and began to make things bloom from the dark letters, using it almost as a flower pot. I wanted to turn those nevers into possibilities, and with each seed, it produced something amazing. 2 hours later, I had finished and managed to get paint everywhere. It was intense, but I felt 10 times better, as if a weight was lifted off my shoulders. On my walk home, since the studio was around the corner, my phone began to light up with messages, voicemails, and texts. Since it was underground, I did not have cell phone reception. Mama knew where I was, so it wasn't her calling me like that. So I took out the phone to see it was Mrs. Ednes from the agency. "Call me when you get this, no matter the time," she rushed out in the voicemail. There were 3 more calls like that, but it seemed urgent, so I called her back immediately. "Mrs. Ednes, is everything all right?" I asked with no greeting. "Darling, where you been?" she exclaimed. "Your mama said you were in the studio, and she wasn't bothering you, but I had news for you." The woman rushed out. "Where are you now?" "I'm on my way home." I was confused. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, well, except Mrs. Vega calling me every 30 minutes to see if I got a hold of you yet. She desperately wants you to start working for her, as of tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" I looked at my watch. That's not the impression I got from her husband. "Yeah, well," she huffed and sucked her teeth in a slow beat, and I could only imagine her head turning to look at the phone with her famous side-eye. "Guess she got her way. Can you do it?" There was no immediate answer to give her, as I thought of things I had to do. Well, for one, I had not much to do because, bingo, I didn't have a goddamn job. "Yeah, Mrs. Ednes," I replied. "I can start tomorrow." "Oh, good," she exclaimed. "I'll text you her number now. She wants to talk to you directly. She's an anxious woman, but a good employer. Okay, good luck." "Thanks," I answered. I walked the 10 minutes left before I hit my place and plopped on the couch. Mama had already retired to bed, but left the television on for me to watch absently when I came in. This was her ritual. As I put the volume on mute, I called Mrs. Vega, and the phone rang exactly once when she answered. "Faith?" "Yes, Mrs. Vega, this is she," I replied. "Good evening." "Yes, good evening." She sounded relieved. "I wanted to offer you the job because I think you'll be the best fit for Casey. He liked you, of course, and we do too." I almost wanted to counter her argument, but then remembered the man was not ever around, so I would have very little interaction with him anyway. "Great," I replied. "So what time should I report tomorrow?" 6:30 would be ideal because Casey will need his breakfast and lunch made for school. He needs to be dropped off, picked up, etc. However, I'll need to go over some things with you beforehand, so 6:30 is the start time," she concluded. "Sounds good, Mrs. Vega," I answered. "I'll see you all tomorrow morning then." "Great," she sighed. "I'm glad to have you aboard Team Vega." I smiled and said, "Happy to be here, ma'am." I looked around the apartment, then at the time, and jumped up to get in the shower and prepare for the big first day of being a real-life nanny. It was not easy work, and it required someone to be on their toes at all times. It was more than just the client. Some outside factors also made the job harder. A position that required you to look after a person or an entire family was not for the faint of heart. Sometimes I wondered if people really knew what it took to run a household. When I knocked on the door at 6:15, Mrs. Vega answered with a huge smile. "Early," she commented. "I like that." I smiled, but didn't comment, and thought my mother's words were never truer. If you're on time, you're late. So I always planned to be at my destination 15 minutes early. This gave room for train delays, which often happened in New York, and human issues like emergency bathroom use. That's happened to me often enough, too, especially when I'm nervous. "Thank you again," she said, as she led me upstairs again, "for coming on such short notice. Casey is expecting you, as he can't wait to tell you he almost made it to World 5. I laughed and followed her.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?